this has been on wireless earpods, wireless earbuds for many, many years on
Yes.
all competitors, right? Like,
Yeah.
wow, look, you can now swipe up or down to adjust volume. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Tech Cynics podcast. We've been on a long hiatus. We had a very successful live stream event of the Nothing phone launch. But I think today we're going to dedicate most of the episode kind of talking about the new technology releases that happened in the past approximately 2 months or so. And we are coming right off the heels of Apple's announcement that happened on in September, which is the new iPhones. So, in short, Apple released three products: the new iPhones, new AirPods, and the new watch. So,
Well, the
before we
two
get
watches. Now there's a new
actually,
line
yeah,
for the watch.
yeah.
So it's four products, really.
Well, two sets of phones, two sets of watches, and and the new AirPods.
Yeah.
And
Was it the AirPods and the AirPods Pro?
no, just the new AirPods Pro.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Um, so two sets of phones were released by Apple. There's the 14 Pro and then the regular 14. The 14 actually is basically a spec bump from the previous iPhone 13, with most other features largely left untouched. They brought a lot of features over from the iPhone 13 Pro over to the iPhone 14, which is the SoC or the new chip that they have. Plus the improvement in battery life. I want to say that they've now have the LTPO screen. I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to double check that.
Yeah, I think they were talking about a new and improved LTPO screen. It
Yeah.
stays on a very low refresh rate,
And then they have
most of the time.
they have enhanced computational photography now with additional sort of steps in their sensor fusion technique that they use to kind of like take multiple photos using multiple sensors and then combining them for better photography. And prices are unchanged from last year. So like the base model iPhone 14 is the same cost in the US as the base model iPhone 13 when it launched. So that's going to be the same. And yeah, most other features
New
are
ceramic sealed, yeah.
the this is going to come with the previously WWDC announced iOS version, which I
16.
I forget what it's called. I guess it's 16.
It's 16, yeah.
Yeah. In the US, they have the new emergency SOS feature that allows for text-based satellite connectivity of very specific emergency messages. And the way iPhone deals with this is that if you are in an emergency, there's like a quick 30-second questionnaire that you need to kind of tap your responses, like, oh, am I in trouble, or is a friend in trouble? Is it a medical issue? Are you lost? Those kinds of, you answer about 5 or 6 messages, which iPhone then kind of sets up as a extremely compressed text message, which then you can it'll then guide you to kind of like point your phone at the sky to try to find like a nearby satellite. So it'll kind of guide you. It'll ask you to kind of hold your hand out into the sky, and then you kind of rotate yourself around like different compass headings until you are able, and it's able to find a satellite, and then it kind of transmits that message over. Emergency SOS currently available only in North America, so basically US and Canada, and they also mentioned that it's free for 2 years. So I can see this being like some sort of like subscription service after that, as Apple does.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
with everything, with a
yeah.
pinch of salt. I see this is like the classic case of inventing a solution without a problem. Honestly, like it's one of
So
those things. I mean, yeah, there's definitely a use case. Don't get me wrong. Like
yeah,
it's definitely useful in that particular situation,
yes,
but
absolutely. The other thing
it's
that
not for the
apparently,
masses.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
everyone's going out trekking and finding themselves
that's
lost in the
true.
woods.
That's true. Also, the you'd be surprised how spotty cell coverage is in the US once you start kind of getting away from main urban centers. So it is useful definitely for that, for back alley roads and things like that. I mean, cell coverage in India, I would say, is far better unless you really are in the weeds.
Hmm.
um, the other thing that's kind of cool about it is that they do allow for one non-emergency situation, which is allow for like the find my situation, where like if you went on a trek, you can kind of like ping your location every couple of hours to let other people know that you're okay. So that's another thing that
Hmm.
they kind of now enable with like satellite connectivity. The other thing that they seem to now allow for is additional sensors that allow for crash detection. So that allows you to kind of say the phone to kind of automatically detect through sort of G forces, as well as apparently airbag deployment. Both of those situations will kind of enable the phone to kind of detect that, oh, it looks like there's a car crash that happened, and unless you
Hmm.
respond, there'll be an emergency call to 911 or whatever. So they're also touting sort of best in class battery life in some sense. I don't know what phones they'll compare to, maybe in the same price point, who knows. Also, I'm not entirely sure if this phone has always on display, which is something that Samsung's been doing for more than what 8 9 years now. Always on OLEDs.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think the main thing I would say with Apple's sort of like big announcement, and I'm kind of excited for, is the 14 Pro. The 14 Pro actually has a kind of UI enhancement that we've not seen from Apple in the phone space for many years. The
That's right.
the idea that they took the notch, they turned it into what some people called a lozenge or like a pill,
A
right?
pill. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
which
pill
which
cutout.
yeah, which again is something that a bunch of Android phones have done before. Before the iPhone
Yeah.
ever did.
We've seen different iterations of
Yeah.
this. We've seen the punch hole. We've seen the pill. We've seen the pill with a punch hole. We've seen
Yes.
all these different variants. But Apple has always been one of those manufacturers, obviously, that has the luxury of owning the software and the hardware,
Yep.
and hence they can do whatever custom bits they want with their devices, right?
Yeah.
And this what you're leading up to right now is the classic example of that.
Yeah, and the
Um,
idea that it's actually kind of genius, right? The idea that
it is.
the Android sort of phone manufacturers have been with this ethos of like, okay, people love full screen displays, and the selfie camera has always been imposing, and they've jumped through all kinds of hoops and design iterations of like, how can we hide this? Can we get it to display under? Can we get the camera under the display and completely make it seamless? Which is what Samsung did with a lot of their
Yeah.
foldables and their new phones.
Yeah.
A bunch of Chinese companies, I think Oppo, tried to have pop out like hardware solutions, right? Pop out cameras, roll up
Yeah. Yeah.
cameras.
We had pop-up cams. Yeah.
There was a rollout camera in the in OnePlus, right, for the 9, 8. I don't remember. Like there was a
Well,
camera
it
that
was still a
a pop-up
camera. It
camera.
was
Yeah.
for the 7 Pro and the
Wow,
7T
that
Pro.
old. Yeah.
That old, yeah, yeah.
So that was basically the answer to
2
the
years
iPhone
ago.
10 launch,
No,
in
but
some
but
sense.
that's again right. Like it's not because nobody tried it. It's
Yeah.
because nobody had a ubiquitous solution that everyone was
Yeah.
going to use, right?
And
Right. If Samsung came out with that punch hole and pill cutout like they did
mm-hmm,
for, I believe, uh, was it the S10? They started doing
mm-hmm,
this.
mm-hmm.
So if they did do this and they put some UI enhancement around this, like
Yeah.
what is the case with Dynamic Island with
Yeah. Hmm.
Apple, it's not a guarantee that every other manufacturer would follow suit because Google never came out saying that, hey, this is something that possibly you could do with your integrations.
True. Now, the one company that could actually have done this was probably Google, right? Like you could see I could see
Yeah,
something like this happen on a Pixel, and kind of like be in lockstep with a new like Android iteration for the UI to do this. I mean, Apple's obviously flexing their hardware software co-design here, but
100%.
when they announced this, I was genuinely impressed in some sense that they kind of. I mean, the main story here is that they're owning the notch, right? And they're turning what could have been like an eyesore into a kind of a feature, and they're doing it in really cool and exciting ways. Like the idea that they show contextual information, it can grow into sort of a notification shade, all sorts of like really cool,
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean,
re-
uh,
really cool implementations. Yeah.
this is definitely. I mean, I was never an iPhone first person anyway, but this feature right here is truly impressive.
Yep.
Just from anybody else's implementation perspective,
Yeah.
not because it's Apple, not because it's just the thought behind it of using it this well. You can see it on screen right now,
Mm-hmm.
this beautifully.
Yeah.
It just goes a long way in Apple's kind of well, uh, now some people might consider this weird, but it's sort of been drab, right? They haven't had like crazy increments to their
I,
OS. It's just been the same, like refined over and over again per year.
yeah.
And this is
Absolutely.
just
Yeah.
like a complete departure from that kind
Yeah.
of idea of retaining the same but making it better.
Yeah. So
I would
even when
argue this is the first time they've done it in like at least 6, 7 years. They've come up with a completely visual homepage or lock screen affecting feature.
Yep. No, 100%. So, the last major sort of update that came from Apple was when they did the transition over to the iPhone 10, and the idea that they're
The
going to
notch.
they got rid of the home button as well, right? And they wanted the
Mm,
whole screen display. So that's when they transitioned the users out into gestures. But it still, I don't think it's as big of a UI change as this, in some sense.
yeah,
Like gestures was a an experience change, right? Like the idea that you now need to retrain the users to, because the home button changed, but it was still sort of the same functionality. But the idea that they've done with dynamic island is very impressive, and I'm super enthusiastic about this, except
yeah.
for one thing here in the US, and I've discussed this with a bunch of friends. Um, Both the iPhone 14 and 14 Pro have lost physical SIM tray implementations in the
Yeah,
US, and this
that
is a
that is a
big.
tough one, man. That's huge. Like you would imagine that somebody who's going to pick up an iPhone 14 Pro at that price point would do some travel at some point. Now, the
So,
challenge with eSIMs is
mhm,
you don't get them that as often wherever you go, right? You
yep,
got to be in that specific kind of
hmm,
environment where that is compatible.
hmm,
One.
yep,
Second, there's a lot of places like I've done recently. I've just
hmm,
had ended up going to a shop and picking up a SIM card, and that's a
yeah,
physical SIM card. I don't need to interact with anybody to get that programmed.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
I just pop it in, and that's it. I'm good to go.
So one of the counterpoints is basically, if you want to talk about, let's say, the average US iPhone consumer, they're usually on these plans that include sort of like international roaming and data. More
Right.
significantly, I would say like the biggest example for a like a cell phone provider uh, that would be great with this. I don't know it's if it's available on iPhone. It's a good question. Like, what if you're like a Google Fi customer, which is I don't think you're allowed to be on iPhone with Google Fi. I think it's Androids.
Yeah.
Google Fi is a really good example of a phone plan that would work in a sort of like an eSIM context, which is it's because it's like a virtual. It's a provider that basically uses Wi-Fi everywhere you go, right? And then it kind of defaults over to some data provider. It's like Geo Global, right? Like
Mm,
Reliance Geo that works on a global scale. Make sure
yeah.
all the voice is routed through data network, and then they have agreements around the world to make it work. Now, I'm currently a T-Mobile customer, and I have a similar setup in the sense that
Right.
it allows for global roaming, and I get global 2G data coverage, which is
Right.
okay for texting. It's
Mm,
not good enough to call an Uber in most Indian cities. Like just 2G is not
yeah.
enough for most of your apps to work.
No, 100%. Like
Yeah,
2G is not cutting it these days. It's just
yeah,
texting,
yeah,
and barely that.
yeah. Now, this is a big problem for, say, like very specifically Indians who are in the US, like myself, who own an Indian number, and we keep it just because we need our one time passwords, right? We need our OTPs because our
Yes.
cell phone number is attached to, our banking
Everything.
services, Aadhaar,
Everything.
everything. I was I was pretty hesitant to move over to iPhone initially because I was going to move from a dual SIM phone to a single SIM phone with the
Yeah.
iPhone 13 Pro. And then what I did was my physical SIM card is my Indian SIM card, which runs, and I get all my
Hmm.
OTPs. And I converted my T-Mobile service to an eSIM, and that's how
Right.
I'm dual SIMing my iPhone 13 Pro right now.
Yeah. Makes
Um,
sense.
if I were to theoretically move to the iPhone 14 Pro, I would have to go back to India to basically get an eSIM working, and then
Wait,
basically
but then
dual eSIM.
can you
Uh,
dual eSIM though?
yes,
Is it you can.
it is as of now. What they say is like, so I'll open up the tech specs, and dual eSIM is supported. But again, there's a lot of question marks. Like, is it supported in India? Are Indian carriers supporting dual eSIM? There's sort of all these kinds of
Hmm.
questions that kind of,
No, I would imagine it works the
yeah,
same way, right? They've separated
yeah,
it virtually. That's all that's happening, really, right?
yeah. So I remember that they have dual eSIM support right now. But again, this is another problem from my side. Like, so uh, eSIM registrations and activations don't work on roaming. So you need to be on
Uh,
home base to be able to do this, right? So you need to be back in India to do this. I have an
right.
additional thorn in this whole thing, which from my quick, like, whatever 5-10 minute research that I found. Um, in I'm a VI customer because VI does okay in Kerala. I like their range and stuff is decent in Kerala. I might port out because of this. VI supports eSIMs only for postpaid customers. So
Yeah, it's
there are these
locking them
multiple
in.
multiple minefields that I have to navigate in some sense.
Yeah.
So current
Yeah, it
eSIMs,
keeps changing, right? Like it's
yeah.
just year on year. I think at this point, just going with Geo or Airtel
Yeah,
kind of
Airtel,
safe.
Airtel and Jio both. I think Airtel especially embraced eSIMs very early on. I believe they were a
Yeah.
eSIM launch customer in India.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so these are kind of like the issues that you have to navigate.
Hey,
And yeah,
just looking at spec sheet, I totally missed this during the
uh huh,
announcements and everything.
uh huh.
They didn't do USB-C though, even with
No,
all
no, no,
the
they didn't do
regulations
USB
defined.
C. So
So
the
they're really riding it out for the
the
2023 mark, right? That's when the deadline they have, right?
I'm, I'm
So
I'm I'm glad that you brought this up. I really expected it, and when I was watching the live announcement, they announced the AirPods Pro first, and the moment they showed the case and they showed the fact that it's got a Lightning connector, I'm like, yeah, there's no way the iPhone is going to USB-C
yeah.
either. That
No,
that would
it's
have
just
been the
riding it out. I mean, I'm sure they're going to position it. We're going to keep our ecosystem as long as we can, or possibly can for our loyal customers and all of that. But it's literally riding it out till 2023 when they've got the deadline,
it
right?
is it
But
is so
as a
annoying.
step
Yeah.
one,
Mm-hmm.
you can now at least see that iPhone or iOS, what am I saying? Apple is now doing two different models regionally, right? They're
Yeah.
doing the SIM tray model also. We spoke about the
Yes.
non-SIM tray model.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
also doing a SIM tray model
Correct.
everywhere else besides the
Correct.
US. So which just
Correct.
goes to show maybe they could just continue doing this split version from next year on, where they do only USB-C for the EU and all the other regulated markets, so to say, and then retain the Lightning port wherever they can. Again, that might open up a big can of worms for them in terms of production, but it's
Mm-hmm.
putting it out there because that's a hardware thing. That well,
Well,
SimTray is also a hardware thing.
it's even more complex. In fact, this is like a funny thing with iPhone. There are dual SIM iPhone models, and they're only in China. Like dual
Ah,
physical SIM.
right. Not one eSIM and
Yeah, yeah,
another
not
SIM.
one
Yeah.
eSIM and one, not one. Yeah, and they have those. And
Right.
apparently, I have no idea what the situation is. Like, it's possible that if you buy like, I wonder if you buy an Apple iPhone from China, whether you'll get a dual eSIM, and that would be like the best. Sorry, a dual physical
Mm.
SIM. That
Mm.
would
That
be
would be
the
the best
that would be
best
the
scenario
best.
for
Yeah,
everybody,
yeah,
right?
best scenario for everyone.
But
Um,
I would imagine that IP rating would be different at that point.
See, that's the other thing, right? Like, my one of my biggest questions was, Apple is showing this quote unquote courage to have a SIMless phone, which is eSIM only, right? The same way like the headphone. Now the
Mm.
question is, there are this physical SIM versions of this phone available across the world.
Mm,
What additional benefit is the US eSIM only iPhone getting? Like,
yeah.
is there an updated IPX rating officially, or is it just like this gut feeling? Oh, I feel like it might be more waterproof, right? So,
Honestly, like until they can figure out how to seal the speakers, the mic, what is it called, the charging port, all of
yeah,
those properly sealed, or got rid of all of these,
yeah.
then I wouldn't worry too much about just having a SIM tray. Honestly, it's just
There
one
was
more
this,
port.
yeah, there was this rumor, like there was this wide rumor among most sort of like Apple rumor mongers that iPhone
Mm.
would rather go completely portless than USB-C.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I can imagine that. They're just going with a charging puck, and that's
yeah,
it.
yeah,
I mean,
with
why would like
MagSafe or whatever.
who data transfers through cable anymore? Anyway,
So I
well,
have a feeling that that might be a situation that Apple will put themselves in, is that they will make it completely
wireless only.
wireless. They'll
Yeah,
make it wireless only, um, and the idea is if you need to debug or repair the phone, you have to open it.
to open it. Yeah, that's when the
The
right to repair thing will kick in all over again.
the only situation where I see where there would be a physical problem or an issue with this is, I think, for car based UIs. And
I well, no, well, they have wireless AirPlay now. And the
yeah,
second thing I was
they
thinking of is,
do.
besides the magnetic puck, they could still have the contact points, like those, just the copper points, where you could transfer data through those as well. If you
It's
you know
like
set
a,
that up that way.
it's like the, it's almost like a laptop MagSafe for the phone.
Sort
Yeah,
of,
right,
yeah,
right.
sure,
It's too bad they already used MagSafe for this, right? Like the the back end of the phone
yeah,
charging
exactly. I mean,
is still
they
MagSafe. So
they could still put contact points on the back to make data happen, but then you're talking about like what you just showed over there. You got a
yeah,
case that's sealed. Now, how do you expose only the contact points? You got
yeah,
to design cases around
yeah.
that. So all these questions would keep coming up. But yeah, if they wanted to go portless, they could totally go portless. There's nothing stopping them from doing it.
Yeah.
And if like what you're saying, debug is a problem or servicing it would be a problem, then this might be one of the solutions they take.
Um, so I'm just kind of scrolling through and looking at what the Chinese iPhone situation is. But in the meantime, we can have a discussion on pricing. So 799 for the base model iPhone 14 thousand, or 999 for base model 14 Pro, and
What about the 14 plus? You have the 14 and the 14
there's
plus.
the 14 and the
That's just a
14
bigger
Plus.
14.
It's just a bigger phone, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the main idea between the 14 and the 14 Plus. What was
What
surprising
is
to
it,
me,
$100?
I believe, yeah, so let's see what the pricing looks like for the 14 in. Yes, it's $100 bump up
Yeah.
for basically the bigger screen. So it's the difference between them being 6.1 inches versus 6.7. What was really
Yeah.
interesting was Apple tried the
The
Mini
mini.
in the last generation, and
Two
they kind of
generations
gave,
they tried it.
yeah, and then they kind of gave up on that idea.
I've seen a lot of people with those minis, man. Honestly, like I think it was a hit, like low key.
That's
They've
interesting. That's
I've
interesting.
seen
I
a lot of
don't.
people with the mini, weirdly.
So I've been a
Especially
yeah.
a lot of women generally prefer those. Like I know
Interesting.
a couple of people who said, "Hey, I want to go back to that iPhone 6s size because it was slim, it was kind of smaller, but the
Yeah.
XR onwards, it was kind of chunky, and
Yeah, it
if you put
became chunky. Yeah.
slap a case on it, it's just even more chunky." So it's yeah, a lot of people actually did go for the mini. I've seen it quite a
Interesting.
bit here.
Okay, so
Weirdly,
um
it wasn't priced cheaper than the
yeah,
regular size.
it wasn't, yeah. Yeah.
It was around the
So
same price, was it?
we can confirm, at least through translation, that
Dual nano SIM.
you will get a dual physical SIM model if you buy it off of China. I'm not sure what if there's a band issue with 5G bands and stuff like that. So that's something you'd have to go through GSM Arena, do a bunch of research to find out if there are 5G bands for US are supported, for example. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you do buy the iPhone 14 Pro and possibly iPhone 14 in China, you will actually get a physical dual SIM. This is really stupid. This is something that they should do in India, actually, right?
Yeah, but then again, India is moving quicker and quicker towards a digital future. They're losing all these legacy technologies quicker than the US
True,
sometimes.
true,
So,
true. Yeah. Um, Pricing, yeah. So we spoke about the 799 for iPhone 14, 899 for 14 Plus, and 1,000
mm,
for 14 Pro, and then the Pro Max is probably an additional. Yeah, so 1,000 for 14 Pro, 1,100 for the Pro Max base models, 128 gigs across the board for all the base models. What was really interesting was Apple's India pricing is for the base model 14 Pro is not bad compared to
mm.
the international model. But if you try to go for the 14 Pro in India, it's a lot more expensive.
Oh,
So
okay. You meant the 14 earlier.
oh yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
So the base model 14 is
Right,
at
the entry level model. Yeah.
entry level 14 entry level iPhone 14 is basically
80,000.
79,900, close to 80 grand, which is just $100
Do you think they had
off.
something to do with the 799?
Yeah, probably they
It
wanted to
looks
match the 799.
Matt's,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
that's interesting. Um,
Well,
there
it
was a
is made in India, so
yeah, at least the base model
benefits
probably is
there.
made in India, so at least some benefits are probably trickling down to consumers. What
Yeah.
is the premium smartphone at this price range in India? What does 80 grand get you in India?
Imagine your S22s coming at that price.
S22 Ultras come in this range, or is that
No, I
1
don't
lakh
think you
plus?
get the
Okay.
Ultra.
So this is really interesting because this is actually kind of competitive. I mean, not competitive if you compare to Android mid-range phones,
Yeah.
but the
So,
14
eh,
is flagship-ish, right? Like with a lot
yeah,
of the features
but
that are available.
I mean, again, that goes with a little bit of a again pinch of salt because
Yeah,
see,
of
the
course.
thing is, it's basically a little spec bump. It's not that big a spec bump over the 13.
Mm.
So I don't know if it warrants a big price bump either. But anyway, it is confirmed 79,900 is what it says on Amazon in India as well. And
Oh,
as a comparative pricing, the S22 with same storage comes in at 73.
okay,
So yeah, close enough.
close enough. I also wanted to confirm that that price, the sticker price, is not like the US price. So it's actually MRP inclusive of all taxes.
Hmm,
The one on Apple's India website. That is really
right.
impressive because when you buy a $799 iPhone here, that's not inclusive of taxes.
Hmm,
So you're looking to add
yeah,
about $70 to $80 worth of like additional state taxes if you buy from a state like Illinois, for example, that has state tax on
or
purchases.
Florida.
Most states in the U.S. do have that. Um,
Yeah.
you might find some loophole if you buy it online through some provider or something like that. But yeah, that's really interesting. So at that price,
Well, it's still like 10,000 ish rupees more
it
in
is.
India.
It is. But
Again,
it's not
but
the
it's not like the
ridiculous.
olden
Yeah,
day that you got to
yeah,
wait for like somebody to show up from the US to get an iPhone or
yeah.
anything like that. So
That's
you
true.
can get it right away. People paying that kind of price they don't really generally tend to care about that last 10,000. They'll make
That's
that, no
that's
problem.
that's usually true. And then, like you said, there's sometimes these kind of like offers that you can get from like different
Yeah.
financiers and banks and things like that. Uh, on the other hand, the iPhone Pro is is uh, is a lot more expensive. So
Hmm.
it touches 130, so 129,900, which is quite a bit more expensive compared to the US counterpart,
Yeah, for sure.
which is a thousand US dollars, which is 80 ish, right?
Hmm.
Pre-tax. With taxes, we are looking at 90 95. So the price differential for the Pro models obviously is a lot more, and I think the add-on effects of GST and things like that really hit that price point hard. So
Yeah.
um, interesting, yeah. that's that's all I have to
Let's
say. So
let's talk about the watch.
yes,
They got a new
So
watch model besides the new Series 8, 9?
yes, Series 8 is the new one. I have a Series
Yeah,
7 on
8.
hand, on my hand. Series 8. So the Apple Watch Series 8 was the first. Actually, they have three models. They have a new Series 8, they have a new
Oh,
SC, and then they have a new
they have a new SC too.
yeah,
Oh,
they have
okay.
a new SE as well. So the Series 8 is practically similar to the Series 7, which is what I have.
Which is always the case. The six,
Yeah,
7, 5, they all kind of blend into each other. There's not
yes. The
much between them.
main the main sort of focus with the new Series 8 is the new sensors that they have on board with it, and the new sensor is actually temperature, and they're big sort of like use cases for women actually for ovulation and sort of like
Mm,
cycle tracking information. They've made it very
mm.
clear that the cycle tracking information, because this is a problem in the
Privacy and all of
US,
that.
yeah,
Right.
is privacy protected and supposed to be end to end encrypted, so nobody can access it without your explicit permission. This is
Right.
an increasing issue here in the US with the recent rulings on abortion and sort of those kind of things. So
Right. Right.
Apple's been made it top priority to kind of convey that information to users.
No, they should. They should.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
it
important.
absolutely does. Makes sense. But what kind of got me excited was the Ultra.
The
It
Ultra.
is
Mm.
it is extremely expensive, but not too much compared to the competition that it's going against, because it's going against $1,000
What is
professional
that?
watches.
But what is that in rupees? Like 89? Is that, am I reading
Oh,
that
this
right?
is we're looking at the Indian.
So what is that? 89, 500?
That's
900?
89,900 in India.
Right.
It's 799 in the US, if I'm not mistaken,
So
or 899 in the US. So
it
799 in the
probably is
US.
8. Wait, then why is the pricing so different here? Because it's the same pricing as the iPhone 14.
I think the
But
the
then,
idea is the Ultra is ultra expensive in India because it has to come from abroad, and then all the like
probably, yes.
yeah, so it's not being manufactured there, right?
So this is another push towards putting an $800 device on your wrist, like where
Yes.
nobody would have imagined that they would buy a watch.
Uh huh.
Well, like generally the audience for this is not
Yes.
going to imagine they're going to buy a regular watch for
Yes.
$800 and put it on their
Right.
wrist for a daily driver.
Right.
Because if you're talking about classical watches, like your
Yes.
non-smart watches, 800 is a pretty hefty tag, like
Yeah. Now,
for a watch.
um, so I'll kind of respond to that, and then we'll talk about the features actually that kind of warrant this. So with this, Apple has one main target here in the US, and that's Garmin.
Right.
So Garmin makes ultra accurate, ultra expensive, ultra chunky watches designed for extreme sports enthusiasts, the folks who are marathon swimmers, marathon runners, long distance cross country runners, long distance hikers. These are people
Mhm.
who need a watch that they can take with super accurate GPS positioning. Um, and I don't know if Garmin makes a dive watch or a dive computer. That's also one of the other features with the Ultra. So
Ah, yes.
the main idea in the Ultra is they have L1 plus L5 accurate GPS. So this is like the most accurate GPS you can get on probably a watch. I don't know if there's hardware like that on phones.
Hmm.
Um, this is 100-meter WR resistant with some additional diving certification. So you can dive up to
Wow.
100 or 140 feet with this. And they've included sort of dive
It's like the
computing.
new age G-Shock.
Yes, they've included sort of like dive computer stuff in this as well. So the
Hmm.
idea again is that you should be able to. I'm trying to like find the position in the video that I'm talking about where they talk about the dive features. Maybe it's better to just kind of look at the actual dive information. So let's learn more about the watch. That got me really interested because so I'm a person that kind of does a lot of open water swimming with my watch. I'm not going to spend
Hmm.
$800 on a watch. I'm an amateur, right? So this is like something that that is aspirational for me in the sense that I will buy this if I swim 2 miles.
Hmm.
So that's like a really cool way to kind of set a goal, right? Like, okay, If I can do something like that, then I can reward myself with an Apple Watch Pro. But otherwise, there's no way I'm Apple Watch Ultra. There's no way I'm going to buy something like this. So it
Yeah.
is a chunky watch. It is a much bigger watch. It's a 49 millimeter titanium case. It is,
Right.
and it's got military spec now for mil
Right.
STD, H10, IP68X. That's all fine. But the dive information that they have is really cool. So dual frequency GPS, speakers that can do up to 8-9 decibel warning noises to like attract attention to people if you're lost in the wilderness or need assistance. Yeah, so the
Hmm.
86 decibel siren that can be heard up to 600 feet or 180 meters away. Um, Crazy amazing microphone so that you can use it on like super windy environments while trekking if you're calling. And this phone is compulsorily cellular. Like there is no non-cellular version of this watch.
Oh, okay.
Whether you put an eSIM in it is up to you, but that's another thing. Yeah, and then there's a depth gauge, so you can do.
I'm sure it's using your LTE for a lot of the features.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's a good question. Can
36
you
hours backup
36
time.
hours regular and then low power 60 hours? So again, extra
Yeah.
chunky battery in here, and then they have these different versions of like loops. There are loops for like the runners versus hikers versus divers. So choose your extreme sport and then choose the band that you want for this. And let me see if I can
At
find.
$800, better come with all three.
Yeah, I know, right? Yes. So what was really cool that I thought was the sea features and the fact that this can now be used as an official dive computer for scuba divers. So
That's
it'll
pretty cool.
actually tell you what your ascent and descent rates need to be to make sure you avoid the bends and things like that. So and it has a like official dive certification.
No, I like this. I like this for
Yeah.
people who actually use these
Yep.
features.
Yep. Yep.
But we know that this is not going to be bought by those people
Oh,
only.
for sure. This is for those ultra adventure sports people. So cool things like this, right? Like it'll guide your dive,
Yeah.
and it'll actually tell you stop your dive. You're ascending too fast.
Well,
Like that's going to be a health issue, like a risk. And the dive computer is really cool too, right? I would like to try this now, like while I swim and dive open water, but like. I'm not going to
yeah.
pay $800 for it. Not as an amateur for
I'm going
sure.
to wait
Yeah.
for this to trickle down to the next series.
Yeah. It's really cool though. I so as I was watching the announcement and as I was watching them explain all of these things, I honestly expected this to be $1,000 watch, and it is $1,000 watch in India. It's not $1,000 watch in the US. But yeah, I was really impressed by this. So much so that you know what, I might like get into fitness or whatever, but I want to like hit some crazy unreachable milestone and then reward myself with this. like I said, right? If I swim 2 miles, I'll buy this watch.
You
I don't
just
think
swam out to an island or something the other day, right?
yeah. We swam out to a shipwreck, and that was
Right.
like a 200-meter swim.
Oh,
I've done
you got to do
ha-
10 times that for that time
I've done
difference.
half a mile,
Right. Okay.
which is decent for a swim, but two
So
miles is
a quarter. A quarter.
yeah. I've done a quarter of that, and if I really push myself, maybe, but like whatever.
Also, you've got a new guest in the podcast. Your cat's
Yes. So
in the background.
that's Lala or Lana. She's kind of like into technology as well. My roommate's cat. You'll see her kind of like show up every once in a while. Um, Moving on, one quick thing that we can talk about. There is a new AirPods,
Yeah, and
which
well,
honestly, yeah.
I mean, their
Go ahead.
spatial audio engine
Yeah,
is new
sure.
or
And
advanced, and
more,
then the
yeah,
case is advanced. That's it, really, right?
kind of.
So you
Yeah,
got
and
a
the
loop on
case.
it.
Yeah, you can put a loop on it, and the case can make noise to find the case, which is nice for people who lose their stuff. But honestly, this is more of AirPods. So AirPods definitely has an advantage over all other wireless earphones in how in sync it is with the rest of the Apple ecosystem, and seamless moving between devices, all of that kind of stuff works very well. But
Right.
there are honestly some features that have been on other wireless headphones for years that they finally brought into AirPods, like being able to change the volume. Honestly, this is something you couldn't do with the earlier AirPods. I'm not kidding.
What?
So earlier AirPods only have a single sort of like touch sensitive location where you can just kind of like tap So you can do the tap
Why wouldn't
sort
that be the first thing you do? Sorry, I totally
volumes.
blanked out on that one. I didn't know that that was a thing. Like that's the first thing you need on headphones. Volume adjust.
I could be wrong. There could be a way you could like try to do tap to volume, which is again horrible. But honestly, this is the first time AirPods have a capacitive surface on them for you to change volume on.
It's
Like
crazy.
it's so stupid that it took them this long to do it.
Yeah.
Even
I
though it's
always never
something.
liked the regular AirPods anyway. The pros I haven't tried, but the regular
So
AirPods keep falling out of a year, so
yeah.
it's not
So fun
designed
fact,
for me.
I bought Gen 3 AirPods, used them for
Uh-huh.
about 3 weeks, and then returned them because they wouldn't stay in my ears. And
Yeah,
then
that's
I
the same
I
for me. I
traded
don't know
up
whose
to
ears those are designed for.
I traded up to the previous gen or whatever what was the current gen AirPods Pro back then, and
Hmm.
the fit's fine at least.
Yeah, and I need those rubber seals, man. Like
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
spending all
I
this money for good audio, and you have all this passive noise coming through. Then what's the point?
The fact that these rubber tips are not on the regular AirPods is bewildering to me. The fact that
Yeah,
at that
but
price point.
some people don't like the rubber
Oh,
things.
yeah,
They
I see.
specifically choose to not have
I see.
that tight of a seal in their ear, which is fair. Then
Yeah.
that's what they want. I'm sure they've done their research, but not enough for our ear types apparently.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that the previous generation of AirPods came with like three of these, but now
Ah,
they've included an XS, like an extra small version of the tips.
hmm.
So and they have a new adaptive transparency. So noise cancellation is only on the AirPods Pros, and
Yeah,
there is a transparency mode that kind of lets in audio through the mic. And now
yeah,
there's this new idea of adaptive transparency, which lets in conversations, but not like harsh
yeah. I think
environmental
the
noise.
video they showed was a jackhammer
Yeah, the
situation where
jackhammer
somebody's
going off.
walking
Yeah,
out.
yeah. Look at this higher level of control. Like that's hilarious. The fact that this is
A
like
feature.
actively advertised as a feature, whereas this has been on wireless earpods, wireless earbuds for many years on
Yes.
all competitors, right? Like,
Yeah.
wow, look, you can now swipe up or down to adjust volume.
I mean, the buds I have right now even have physical buttons. Like it's not
Yeah, yeah,
capacitive. It's like it's
yeah,
actually clicks, which gives you that.
yeah,
I like that. And
yeah,
you know if you've done the actual click or not.
yeah.
And it doesn't false trigger and all of that stuff.
Okay. I mean, the idea that so the previous charging case was also MagSafe compatible. You could charge it on regular, but I think now they allow you to use the Apple Watch charger to charge these. This is interesting. I don't think this was possible
Yeah.
before. It's funny that it wasn't. Yeah, and now you have a lanyard loop, like
Yeah.
things that should have been there from the get go, right? Like it's hilarious. And yeah, then
Yeah.
now there's a small speaker
The
on the charging
built-in
case that allows you to do this as
siren
well.
speaker.
Yeah.
It's basically locate my
Mm-hmm.
case.
Yeah. So that's all of the Apple announcements as far as we wanted to cover on the podcast. We'll do a quick sort of like um, rundown of what Samsung has as well because they also made a bunch of announcements. And what's really interesting is they made a bunch of announcements in their cell phone space. Specifically, there are two
The
new folds,
foldables. Yeah.
and then did they also announce regular? No, the S22 has been always around, right?
No,
It's
that's
just the
been
new
out for a while.
foldables, yeah.
It's just the two folds. That's what they
The two
announced.
folds and then the new watch and the new buds, very similar
That's
to
right.
Apple's
Yeah.
announcements. Um, there's also a new Galaxy Bespoke, which is interesting. The idea that now you can kind of Rolls Royceify your phone
Right.
and give sort of like a custom order on your phone with sort of like choice of materials and colors to change. And this is only on Z Flip, right?
Yeah. The flip four. Yeah.
The Flip 4, yeah.
So um, I'm still not convinced just because the crease. Again,
Mm,
like just the
mm,
same topics that we talked about folds.
yeah,
It's just the crease is just it's too evident.
it is.
Like there's no getting away from it.
Mm-hmm.
They should have tried something different. I mean, the fourth generation in what have they really? done to improve that situation.
Uh,
Because the previous time, what they did
mhm.
was they hid the camera behind the display.
Yeah.
That's Now, is that back? Um, didn't quite follow this. Is it still behind the
Mm.
display here on the new foldables?
Let's grab the new Zip Z Flip
Well,
and
yeah, yeah. It looks to me that it's behind the screen still.
yeah. So they have behind. I don't know if it's on the flip or if it's on the fold only, but there is
Yeah.
um
Let, let's have a look at the fold, the Z
the
Flip.
fold. Okay, so also the Z Flip is apparently the world's top selling foldable display. I'm a
Yeah.
foldable display camera. I'm a sorry, foldable display phone.
You don't know
too
what
many
to call these
buzzwords.
things anymore.
Too many buzzwords. Yes, there should
Yeah,
be an
it's
under
still
screen.
behind the screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's okay. I wonder if
Uh-huh.
they've refined this any further than last time around.
This is giving me a nice Nokia communicator vibes, right? Like
Communicator.
this screen right here.
The real
Um,
Nokia communicator, like I was saying, was the Surface Pro or the Surface Duo 2, which
yeah, that's
I
true.
haven't really heard much buzz about anyway. It's basically two screens slapped together.
Mm.
It's a foldable, quote unquote.
So, folks who are in sort of that level of like managerial positions and stuff, like people who are always on the go, on the work, they truly believe in like the productivity powerhouse that this phone enables, especially with the S Pen and everything. Um, they
I
did
like that
did
you can have two separate screens on multi
yes,
window, even though that
yes,
Android has had multi app
uh huh,
and multi window support for a very long time.
yeah,
This really gives you that real estate to make that actually work sensibly.
yeah.
Because
The other,
otherwise, you have that constant situation of the
hmm,
keyboard popping in places where you don't want it to pop in.
yeah,
That's always been the gripe that I had with multi-window or multi application running side by side. Is
right.
when you got to open up the keyboard, it gets real messy.
Hmm. The other thing is the new Android enhancement, I believe, with the new versions of Android is that now that the unfolded view of the phone now has an official dock that
Yeah,
allows you to kind of like fast switch between applications and kind of like very similar to the UI experience on iPads right now. With the
yeah.
idea that you can launch and then kind of like pin windows to the two sides of your phone, which is really cool. They're even supporting up to, I think, maybe up to four.
It
I'll
is
be
for
correct.
Windows,
Oh wow,
but then
yeah,
again, you get into the same situation
yeah.
that I just described, where each individual window is pretty small
Mm,
for a keyboard to also fit in.
I see.
You can have a common keyboard, but I don't know. If to
Yeah.
me, UI wise, it looks a little odd.
The one thing that really annoys me with Samsung's sort of marketing is they always tell you what the best case pricing of the phone would be. So 899, but that's requires an eligible trade in. The actual cost of the
Yeah,
phone
no,
for the Z
it's
Fold
well into the
is much
thousands,
more
right?
experience, much more expensive if you don't trade in. So I want to say, ugh, and it's so heavily locked into carriers. So yeah, so the Z Fold 4 is 1799 is the official
Yeah,
price
it was
without any
way
trade.
off from
Yeah,
best scenario, right? Eight
yeah,
ninety
way
nine
off.
to $1,000 more or $900 more. It's crazy.
And what is the price of this phone in India? I need to look that up. It's well above
It's
1.5
1.5.
lakhs.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's around that 1.5 ish.
Samsung.in. Um, have you seen a lot of these foldables out in the
I have
wild?
seen none out in the wild, but I've
Wow.
seen some in
Okay.
store. I've experienced some in stores.
Yeah, yeah. I've
I've
checked them
seen
out at
none
the
here.
store. Yeah, it's something you spend like 30 seconds on. Go like, oh, that's cool. Okay.
And then
Uh,
you
uh
switch off the screen, look at it
yeah,
from a distance, look at it from an angle, you see that
yeah.
crease and walk away
Yep,
immediately. It's pretty much what happens
yep.
in an
Exactly.
experience store. I
Uh,
like the value of the flip, which is probably why it sells well. Is
yeah.
that it's compact, it's cute. I
Uh
could
huh.
see how it appeals to a lot of people who don't really care about using their phone that much,
Yep.
or using a lot of or having a lot of screen time with it. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that you can stylize, or
Mm.
it's more of an accessory than a
Yeah,
phone.
yeah, yeah.
at that point. So it's pretty
Not.
cool, and it's
n-
probably why the custom design that they offer, the
Yeah.
one that you just
Yeah.
showed, was on the fold,
Yep.
not the it was on the flip, not the fold.
Yes, exactly. So
Uh,
the bespoke edition is only on the flip. Um, at the risk of sounding too, I don't know, gendered or sexist, this seems like a really good option for, like, I don't know, like fashion conscious ladies, for example. Like if you're
oh,
walking around
100%.
only with a clutch, right, and you don't have like a full size purse, this basically is like a compact mirror that you can kind of like slip into a purse. And that kind
Yeah.
of has a lot of appeal to like folks who are super fashion conscious and don't want to walk around with this big like candy bar slab, right?
No, this is
So
100% true. In fact, I don't know where I've seen it, but
hmm
on most occasions, I've seen a real person using one of these flip
hmm
phones. It's been a woman, but
uh
again, that could be just like a situation that I saw. I don't know.
yeah,
But no, what you said makes absolute
yeah,
sense,
yeah,
right? So you have restricted space.
yep,
Guys generally tend to have regular size pockets, and
yeah, we have
they
pockets,
generally
yeah.
like the. Yeah, we
We have
have pockets, right?
massive pockets. We can usually fit a candy bar in there like without much
Eh,
trouble.
exactly. So no,
And
it's good. I like it.
mhm.
Motorola tried with the Razor. I don't know. It didn't really get anywhere. They tried to revive the nostalgia, but didn't really hit home.
So the thing that happened with the Razor is really interesting. I like I'm happy that you brought it up. They had it was a wasted opportunity because they had a lot of hype going into the announcement. A lot of people were really kind of like interested with this idea of like, oh my god, we're going to have like a touchscreen Razor that opens out into a candy bar phone running Android. And they made way too many compromises, right? You got last gen hardware, you had to make
Yeah,
crazy compromises on the camera quality and things like that to just get the fold uh, sort of aesthetic working, and that was
yeah,
priced way too high. And
yeah. I think they should have waited. They should have waited for this to
yeah,
kind of come out. But again, I don't know. Like personally, I like nostalgia to be nostalgia. I don't want it revived, right? Like don't do
that's
it just for the sake of
true.
like reviving it and then try to ride
Yeah,
that wave of you having success in the past with
yeah.
one phone. Just like do something better, right? And then people start buying your phones or devices again. You
So
have to be innovative. You can't just be like, oh, I had this phone in the past and then it's going to do the same branding and then just go ahead and do the same thing.
I
It
mean,
didn't work.
it's a really good question. Like, what is so? Let's say you want to start a nostalgia focused phone company, and your ethos is like, I hate touchscreens. I just want to create a phone that's like a Nokia, but it needs to have all the latest features. Like, what kind of software support do you get these days? Like, can you run like the latest version? Can you like make a custom version of Android that works with a physical keyboard
Yeah.
that can flip, but in a super small and super compromised screen size?
Well, screen size, no. That's where you got
Yeah,
to have certain
yeah,
limitations. So there is a minimum size that you have to hit.
yeah,
But you can do certain things, and I think BlackBerry did this with their more later models, right? They did
yeah,
have
yeah,
Android,
yeah.
but their skin of it, and then they had the keypad and
Mm-hmm,
the navigation bar, whatever you used to call that.
mm-hmm.
Um, so they did do that,
Okay.
and to be fair, it is
Mm-hmm.
possible to drive Android just like you would a PC, right, with a
Yeah.
cursor and a physical keyboard.
Mm,
The question is, does anybody really want that, right? So,
yeah.
but not anybody. Right? Let me rephrase that. It's probably
Mm,
more like, do enough people want that
mm,
for it to make, ROI for that company making it?
yeah.
It's a niche problem,
Yeah.
and and then the audience for that is probably more niche.
Yep. I mean, speaking of this anyway, like, the last time we had one of these episodes, we did a live stream coverage of the Nothing phone. It's been 2 months. Um, have you
Yeah.
seen any in the wild? Like, what's the prognosis? Like, have you seen
Um, I can't
in?
say that I've seen. I've
Okay,
heard of somebody having booked it, but then in the end pulling out and buying something else.
interesting.
Uh, but yeah, not too much noise, not as much noise
Mm,
as I expected. But then again, I haven't really,
yeah,
um, yeah. I mean, maybe it's the circles I run in now that
yeah,
really don't care.
that's
But
true.
it isn't like days of past where a new phone
Hmm.
comes out and everybody's dying over it. It isn't like that anymore. Because people
I'm
have
just
generally decent phones, and then they
yeah,
they
I'm
upgrade all
just
the
kind of
time.
checking out if it's still available on say Flipkart if you wanted to get one.
I think it is. I saw a news article
Okay,
with some kind of offer coming up on a Nutting phone.
okay,
So I'm not sure what that was. Didn't really
yeah,
look into it too much.
yeah. I'm just yeah. So
But it's
if you
still the
wanted
same
the
pricing, man. Okay, so it's not come
yeah,
down.
yeah. Also, like yeah, I'd have to enter some kind of pin code to see how fast the delivery is. But yeah,
Hold on.
usually
This is
delivered in
the
3 days.
no, no,
Okay.
no. This is cheaper now. This is the 12 GB variant
Yeah, yeah.
at
This is the 12 GB
39,999.
version.
So what is the
8
8
gigs,
GB version at?
36
Okay.
triple nine. Okay.
Wait, I can't remember the pricing now.
So
Is it only
so
this much?
and if you want one, I think it was 34, but then there was I think some kind of
Oh, that was
launch offer. Or,
the launch offer. Yeah.
okay, and you can get one in 3 days if you want one. What's a lot of
Yeah.
reviews though? Apparently,
Hold up. Scroll up
yeah.
all the way to the top. All the way to the top. Oh, this is 256 gigs. Is that the smallest variant?
Ah, that's a good question. So nothing. Uh, let me search for nothing.
I think
Yeah, no, no, it is
no,
cheaper. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, so
it is
the
cheaper now. There you
34,
go,
yeah,
34K.
34. So it is still at the launch price and available within 3 days or so. Um, Lots of reviews. Decent phone, not great. Did not meet expectations. Blah, blah, blah. So there are people buying them.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just haven't seen any. That's all.
Yeah. The idea that their glyph sort of interface was a neat idea, sort of like a disruptor. I don't think it'll gain traction,
Like
right?
an Apple logo.
Most people have their phones the other way around, so on the table.
More than anything, it looks like the Apple logo right now, right? With the white and the leaf on the top.
Does this have an always on display like Samsung? I'm not sure.
I believe all phones come. Most
All
Android phones
almost
come with
all
always on.
always on. Then I mean like the
Yeah.
glyph display doesn't help as much as like just flipping it on the other end, right? Like, and seeing what.
Honestly, like that's what we were talking about during the live stream, right? Like who's
Yeah,
using this that they want active like
yeah,
notification in this format.
yeah.
It's a
It's a
flex.
gimmick.
It's what it
Yeah,
was.
it was a flex. It was kind of a gimmick. If you're like Kalpe and you're sitting in a crowded movie theater, people will know that you have one of these because it'll blind everybody around you. You can give a challenge to all of the VFX you're watching on your latest MC or Brahmastra movie, I guess. But
The
that's about it.
strobe,
Yes.
set it on strobe,
Actually,
and just like give everyone.
you'll be pretty popular at a party or a nightclub because you can offer an additional strobe and like keep keep the party going if you want to. Yeah. Um. One final piece of news to kind of complete the phone puzzle of 2022. There's going to be an event coming up on October 6th where the Pixel 7 will be officially announced or launched, I guess.
Yeah,
And
that's gonna be a tough one. They better do something like the island.
that's going to be really interesting. Can you imagine, like, if Google's kind of like scrambling, like,
Quick, quick, quick! Put something together.
let's quick approve this feature into Android, and like the frantic phone calls to Samsung and other Android folks are like, hey, this is coming up, okay? Yeah, make sure it's on your roadmap for your next. We'll release it first, but you make sure it's on the roadmap for your releases and blah blah blah. It would
Yeah.
be so funny. Pixel 6 was it's a very divisive phone, right? Like it's a lot of
I mean, we
people.
spoke about this earlier,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
only for markets where you have the support system. Otherwise, kind of not buying it.
I,
A lot of
I, I
people
thought
want the
Pixel was
Pixel.
I thought Pixel was doing pretty well in India. It was kind of like the phone for people who wanted to move away from OnePlus. They were disappointed by OnePlus. No?
I don't know. I mean, like I can guess that if you're in one of the more T1 cities, that you
Mm-hmm.
would end up buying it with
I
comfort.
see.
But
I
if
see.
you're anywhere else, you're. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't risk buying it.
Really?
just in case I get a lemon or I mean, this doesn't happen and never happened with me
Okay.
in recent years that I get a phone that breaks within the first year or where the
Oh
warranty
wow.
coverage is there.
So my
It doesn't
experience was
happen.
pretty good with the. So I had I don't remember if it was a 3A or a 4A. A friend of mine bought that because they were wanted to move away from the OnePlus 5. It was getting old and was, um, got cracked or had physical damage. When my friend is not particularly good with keeping his phones crack free, so his phones always fall off. And apparently, his phone fell, cracked. So then he got the screen replaced, and then fell and cracked again. So he's like, "Screw this! I'm going to move to a better tier phone with better glass on it." But again,
Yeah,
it
a
was
mil
super cheap,
spec
right?
one.
It was super cheap, right? Like $400. So I bought it off of him, and then I took it to India. The support infrastructure in India was pretty good. It was B2K doing service for Pixel phones, and
Hmm.
that's the whatever. I think it's like this service
Where was
provider that
this?
this is Delhi.
Ah, okay.
B2K, yeah, B2K is but they have a all India pickup program similar to OnePlus, right? Like somebody will come pick up the phone, they'll
Well,
do the
OnePlus
repair.
doesn't need a one pickup program. They have service
Okay,
centers
they have
everywhere
service
now.
centers across India. Um, we got the screen replaced, and it's been fine since. Like I sold it to another friend, and it's fine.
Hmm.
Um, I thought there were people who were big fans of it because they wanted like at least that price range, the non-flagship, like the mid-range spec range with where the A series phones kind of cover, like the 4A, 3A or whatnot, because their cameras usually punch way above their weight for other compared to other
Yeah.
mid ranges at that price range. So I genuinely thought Pixel was doing better, but I think Samsung's kind of ruling the roost now these days for Android phones in multiple price ranges, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
the flagships, yeah,
Mm.
but more and more, I just see a lot
Mm.
of the Chinese brands
Oh,
just
I see. I
ruling
see.
the space. It's just everyone, like Vivo,
Mm.
Oppo, all the BBK stuff.
I
This is
see.
pretty much killing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Android enthusiast space is kind of getting a little weird
It's
now in some
water's
sense.
muddy. It's water's
Water's
very
muddy.
muddy.
Yeah.
Like it's yeah, there isn't like something to kind of lust
Excite
after.
people, right? Like yeah.
Yeah,
And Samsung is doing that only sort of in the foldable space, like lust after our foldables. But
yeah. No, I mean it's the same story that they did with the notes. Like they don't
yeah,
talk about the
yeah, yeah.
notes anymore. Like
That's true.
they don't even have a new note. I think they just gone for all in on just foldable.
Yeah, it's foldable, or you buy the Samsung S22 Ultra Max, whatever the largest screen size is available, right? And that's your note essentially,
Yeah, but you don't
right?
get the S Pen with that. That's
But okay, oh, really? I thought there was like
was it?
S22 Ultras. I think are available with the S Pen.
Oh,
You
it is.
might have
It
to buy.
is. My
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
My
Okay,
bad.
okay, okay.
It
Yeah,
is. Ultras do
okay.
have the S Pen. My bad.
So
But that's it. One
yeah.
lakh 10,000. That's what that's priced at.
Hopefully, in our next podcast, I think we'll kind of talk about what Google's response will be. We'll see what they talk about on October 6th. Like, the thing was,
Yeah.
it's so funny, right? Like, Android made these superior UI gains over the last 3, 4 iterations, right? They
Hmm.
did fantastic stuff with notifications, enhanced notifications, the size that you could have variable notification sizes and notification shades with controls on them.
Groupings, all that. Yeah.
Beautiful work actually that Google did that actually went over and above what Apple was doing for many years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then suddenly
And
Dynamic Island
arguably
shows
still
up.
so with notification.
Yeah, and then now suddenly Dynamic Island shows up, and now it
Island
just
boy.
swung the other way all of a sudden. Like
Yeah, yeah.
that's
No, which is what
nuts.
I was saying earlier, right? Like it's one of those features that has impressed me in that they've finally done something different with their UI
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it's completely new from scratch that they're using like brains, like instead of just regurgitating the same thing over and over again.
yeah, man, absolutely impressive. Anyway, I think with that, we'll just keep this as a short podcast. We're going to sort of trial this
Yeah.
format where we'll mostly talk about like these big launches. We covered most of the cell phone uh, announcements and the upcoming announcement from Google as well. Um,
OnePlus
And
did a tiny launch
oh,
that
they did.
completely
Okay.
went unnoticed. I
Oh.
think they stopped trying ever since they lost the software end of things.
Yeah, yeah, they're yeah. Uh, it's kind
So
of sad.
OnePlus 10 something,
Uh-huh.
10R, no,
Yeah.
what's the new one?
Oh,
10
we'll have to
Pro?
look
Yeah,
this
10,
up.
no.
It's too. It's so sad, right? Like at OnePlus before, there would just be like this one phone that everybody was crazy about, and now
Yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah.
just like
And now they're just like silently
s-
rolling out phones so nobody knows. What is it?
nuts,
10R?
man.
I can't remember. But anyway, I, I, I think it's a 10R.
Yeah,
But anyway, they're just coming out with silent phones now.
yeah. There's a 10R 5G, which is for 35 grand. This is
Yeah, that
interesting.
might be
They've
the one.
had this. Oh wow! See, look, they even made like a change to like the back face that
Hmm.
looks interesting, but like, sure.
Doing all the wrong things now that nobody cares about.
They should just call it. We've settled.
Yeah.
All right. So, and then with that, I guess we'll call it an end to today's podcast. And hopefully, I think once we're done, we'll for the next podcast we'll cover the announcements from Google. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking we might even talk about like we'll make a bucket of like phone ranges and then talk about what we think are good phones in like each of these price ranges. Starting at sort of
Yeah.
like a mid enthusiast level. I don't think we'll talk about like sub 10k or 10k to 20k rupee phones because those buckets are
That's the
so
muddiest
crowded.
waters.
Yeah, they're so crowded with like
I,
hundreds of
I
different
think you
phones.
can't go wrong in that
Yeah,
sub
with
10K bracket. Just pick one.
just pick one. And 10k
Pick
to
one with the best
20k,
specs.
yeah, 10k to 20k, you're probably some kind of Samsung or like a Redmi or even possibly OnePlus in some of those brackets
OnePlus,
that
well,
you can find.
OnePlus starts 20 plus, so 10 to
No,
20.
but if you got a Nord CE2
No, it's
Lite is available at
still.
19 grand apparently.
Oh, okay, just under 20. Okay,
Just
my
under.
bad.
Yeah,
Just graduate. No,
yeah,
but yeah, we could do that. We could do
yeah.
that as well. So it's
And it'll be interesting actually. Even say next year's announcement, if Apple is actually serious about India, if they release an SE that's very close to
yeah,
flagship, then they
that
might be able to
that
compete
that'll
in the
be a
mid-range
game changer.
space.
But they won't do that, right? Like
Yeah,
that'll be too close. Like no, people buy the iPhone for what it looks like to
yeah, yeah,
others, right?
yeah.
Honestly, as stupid as that sounds, in India, it's about the badge
It's the
and
flex. Yeah,
it's the flex. So if it
it's
looks
the flex.
identical to
Yeah,
a regular iPhone, then
yeah. They're
why
not going
would
to
people buy
eat
a
into their
regular
own
iPhone?
luxury
And it's
segment, right?
and
Yeah,
it's already known that
yeah, yeah,
Apple doesn't sacrifice any
yeah.
performance
Yep.
regardless of their
All right.
range, right? You get the same experience across the board,
Mm-hmm.
except the dynamic what do you
Mm.
call it, island now,
Yep.
right? You get that as a bonus, but besides
Uh-huh.
that, all of it is going to be the same.
All right, and with that, take care, guys, and please do leave your comment and feedback about like how we're doing with the podcast, and we'll see you in the next
Yeah,
one.
we know we've been on a 2 month break, but
Yeah, yeah,
we're hoping to resume these more often.
yep. Take care, guys. See ya.